And hello, good people, and welcome to the All in Johnson County podcast. This is the podcast where we look to lift up all things good and beneficial in Johnson County, Indiana. And today we have a very special guest with us here on All in Johnson County. His name is Christian Maslowski. He is the CEO and president of Aspire Johnson County. I'm Dr. Brad Miller, glad to be with you as your host as we welcome Christian to All in Johnson County. Christian, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here on this beautiful, almost spring day.
Awesome. So glad to have you with us. And you, as we mentioned, the CEO and the president of Aspire Johnson County. Those are kind of lofty titles, but let's talk about what that leads us to. What is Aspire and who's it for?
Yeah, great question. Aspire Johnson County is the local economic development organization for Johnson County. We are the only state-recognized economic development organization for the county. We're also a countywide chamber of commerce, so we serve the entire spectrum of economic development. What do you mean economic development? We serve businesses that are here to help keep them here, make sure they're growing and thriving and prospering. We serve the community by helping to recruit and attract new companies here to grow jobs in the community. And then there's a whole host of things that you do to make the community a healthy, successful place for business, quality of life, placemaking, business, eliminating or reducing business regulation. And so we serve the whole spectrum, workforce development, community development. So we're quite busy. It's a lot.
There's a lot going on with there, but you touched on something that I really want to lift up here just for a second. You mentioned that this has to do a lot with the quality of life in Johnson County. So why don't you tell me, even personally, what makes Johnson County a good quality place to live and do business?
So first and foremost, it's always the people. Right, the people that are here, and when companies and their site selectors, their representatives that are representing them to find a new business home, and consultants that work with us, when they visit the community and they talk to folks and they come back to us and they say, every community likes to say that they have great collaboration and they work together, but really it's kind of more co-opetition. But it's genuine. It's real in Johnson County. You guys genuinely want to work together, and you are proud of the community, and that shows, and that makes it a very welcoming place to be. So first and foremost, it's the people. And I say that's not just the people that live here. It's our community leaders. It's our business owners and leaders. It's our nonprofit leaders. And there's that authentic spirit and sense of pride, but not to the point where it's obnoxious. It's a warm, welcoming, and collaborative spirit. And so that is reflected back by those who visit looking to locate here. And so that's first and foremost. It's very affordable. It's a reasonably priced place to live, work, and play. And it's got a great labor force. And so it's got a great story to tell when we're working with companies. And I'm glad that you honed in on quality of place and quality of life, because really in economic development, it used to be just about making the deal. Mm-hmm. Companies would find a piece of land, you have the workforce, great, but let's make a deal. What kind of incentives can we get? What's the rate going to be on the lease or the land? But so much more now in economic development, both from us as economic developers and community leaders, but also in companies. The quality of place is starting to rank higher and higher on their rubric of when they're evaluating somewhere to be, because they know now talent can go because of remote work and a desire for quality of life. Talent will go where they want first and then find a job.
Yeah.
So companies are following the talent. So they want to be in a place that has great quality of life.
I'm sure in your world that you have connections with people in your similar positions in cities around Indiana and other communities around the country. Mm-hmm. Are you finding there is this comparison or this kind of understanding of identifying the the metrics that have to do with what you're saying just now? And if so, how does Johnson County stack up to other kind of similarly oriented communities around the state, around the country?
That's a great question. Nobody's asked me that, so you're the first. I think there are some standard quality of life metrics. There's a lot of health metrics where unfortunately Indiana doesn't rank very well. But there's affordability, there's housing inventory, there's the availability of childcare. There's a lot of very traditional metrics. But to your question, maybe we should invent it. I can't point to one quality of life index that we get asked about and that are being used to evaluate objectively one community to the other. That part is still very subjective. And the company leaders, and again, their representatives, their site selectors, know it when they see it, right?
Okay.
Again, there are many metrics. There's crime statistics. Again, there's lots of traditional things that they're using. There are, and we stack up very, very well in most of those. But again, there's just that it.
The it factor. So tell me, let's go there. I was actually going to ask, my next question is going to be about what is the it factor for Johnson County? What are you learning from the people you have contact with, either within the county who have seen changes in growth or challenges, and or some of the people you have contact with from other places? What is the it factor?
Well, I have to go right back to where I started. It's the people.
Okay.
That is definitely our it factor, and it's a healthy, growing, and I say healthy as in a robust workforce. And growing population, right? We have our high schools are getting full, and the elementary schools are there's strong families,
right?
And companies see that as a positive because it's vibrancy, it's future growth, it's consumers, it's workers, it's company leaders of the future. We also have a pretty good educated workforce, and so I think our it factors are people, and we can tell them. And there have been several companies that have come here that we built great relationships with when they were evaluating the community. And when we had to pull one of those, trust us, right? We had to say, this is our it factor. But boy, did they come back to us and say, you were right. We experienced what you're saying. We have the great labor force. The people are great, just hardworking, good work ethic. Growing, we hired faster than we thought we would, and so that truly has been our it factor. And our community leaders reflect that as well because they are just as a reflection of who we are.
Well, one of the things I've thought about along this line, Christian, see what you think, is that we do not have that one kind of central thing that people can point to. We're not, the Indy 500 track is not in Johnson County. It's on the west side of Indianapolis. On the north side of Indianapolis, you have the big concert venues in Hamilton County. You go to Orlando, you got Disney World. We don't have the one big thing, but we have this melting pot of a number of things. So do you think, compare and contrast that, is that to our advantage in some ways, or is it part of a challenge as well that we don't have?
That's a great question. I think it is. I think we have done a good job of collecting the attractions we have. I think as residents, longtime residents or lifelong residents, we often overlook what we have and we take for granted what we have, and we don't see them as attractions or assets. Right? And I think that'll be true if you grew up in, Hendricks or Hamilton or Shelby or Morgan or any other county, anywhere in the country, quite honestly, you just take for granted what you have and you don't see it as an asset. And so I think our Tourism Bureau in Johnson County has done a phenomenal job of saying, you know what? These places that we take for granted are actually pretty unique and special. And if we would tell their story more, we could get folks to come here. So, and then we have been partnering with our Tourism Bureau to play off of that because tourism is the first date for finding a new place to live, right? So we are also promoting those assets like beautiful downtown Franklin and the Freedom Springs, the pool in Greenwood and the winery at Mallow Run and, the Apple Works and everything that we have here that, again, we know it, we take it for granted how special they are.
And they're also playing up the the tourism groups here in Johnson County are playing up the whole festival aspect, aren't they? You know, that festival countryindiana.com is how that focus. And there's a number of festivals, a number of events. And I'm interested in what you say in your website. You talk about, you mentioned already a little bit about some of the collaboration within these various groups, but also the innovative part, is thinking a little differently, thinking a little, you mentioned about how not, seeing things we've taken for granted and seeing them in a new light. So talk a little bit about these values you have about collaboration and innovation, how they go together in making this a quality place to be.
Yeah, I think that groups of organizations and businesses and community leaders have gotten together to help solve and tackle some issues. One of the prevailing concerns and question marks that we have here, but also every community is dealing with it right now, is housing. Right?
Yes.
Inflation has driven home prices up. Interest rates have kept people where they are. They don't, they're sitting on a great asset, but they don't want to have to get an expensive mortgage, and so inventory is tough. And so I think that's a great example where you've seen residents, community leaders, volunteers, business leaders come together to tackle that. And sometimes that leads to new nonprofits. Sometimes it leads to thought leadership to inspire and encourage others that have the official authority or the money to do that. And sometimes it's just creating the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Because that's always the first step. Is we need to acknowledge and talk about it.
Yeah.
And so Aspire isn't always the one to produce and to do. Sometimes we're the convener, right? Or sometimes we are a key player at the table as a team member. But all of this feeds into creating that quality of life that is so important to attracting talent, which then attracts jobs.
You mentioned attracting talent, attracts jobs, attracts growth, opportunities. We have a rather unique opportunity here in Johnson County, with which is happening on April 8th, 2024, the solar eclipse. And you and Aspire and some other groups in the county are kind of really taking advantage of that, or seeing this as a great opportunity. Tell me a little bit of what the implications of this unique, really once in a millennium event is having here, and what the business community here is doing and things like that.
I've heard of this. I've heard of this eclipse thing.
A little bit, yeah. Almost like it blots out the sun, almost.
That's right. On April 8th, in the afternoon, the moon will be passing directly in front of the sun, creating a total eclipse of the sun. Why that's unique, and if for those who've been around a while, you might recall, I think it was 2017, we had a partial eclipse here in Johnson County where you could go out, and it got a little dark, you put on your glasses, you looked around, you had fun. That wasn't the full meal deal, right? The path of totality, meaning that the moon is directly in front of the sun, that's actually about 100-mile wide radius on the path. And Johnson County is not just in that 100-mile radius. Johnson County is literally in the smack dab middle of that radius, meaning we will see the exact center of the moon going through the sun, past the sun. We will have the longest period of time of total blackout. And I'll tell you, we didn't fully appreciate this and how unique this was until probably right around the holidays, when more and more folks were starting to talk about this. People will travel here to experience this because not every community gets to experience this. In fact, the next time we will have something like this will be in 130 years.
Wow.
And so it truly can be a once-in-a-lifetime experience to see and experience this. And so we are expecting upwards of 100,000 visitors to the community.
Goodness. Isn't that incredible to think about that?
Yeah.
For this event. So what are we doing about that?
Yeah.
We got 100,000 people coming. What are we going to do about it?
Yes. So first and foremost, there's many ways to look at it. And because we are the Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development organization, we wanted to make sure our business leaders and owners, first and foremost, were prepared, aware, and taking advantage of it, if that's their business. And kind of the catalyst for that was we actually had some of the large logistics industries that get a lot of shipments in, contacting us and saying, hey, have you heard about this? What's going to happen? We've got trucks that are scheduled, we've got employees that need to come in, and so because of the volume and influx of visitors, We have been talking with businesses and advising them to adjust their schedules, their delivery schedules, their work shifts as much as they can, because Johnson County, while we love it and it's great, and we do get quite a few visitors here for these assets that we take for granted, we don't normally have the influx of that kind of volume of people at one time. Mm-hmm. So it's just not something we're normally built and set up for. And so, businesses are encouraging employees who can remote work, maybe they're not in a tourism-related business or a service-related business, to work from home that day. Logistics centers are shuffling their delivery and shipment schedules because we know that the highways and the main thoroughfares will be pretty packed, right? And that's going to slow down traffic, create some traffic jams. We know schools have already decided to be canceled that day, again, for the same reason. The buses are going to have a really hard time.
I didn't know schools were not meeting.
Schools are not meeting that day. And so, parents are going to have kids at home.
Yeah, you got different considerations, childcare and such. Yeah.
Right. And so we want to make sure that those folks are prepared. Now, it's also a huge opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so for those who have large parking lots or fields, those who are in a service-oriented business like restaurants, retail, this is an opportunity for them to capitalize on that, right? And to do themed events, to sell tickets for that, to do themed products, to do themed restaurant, menu items. And so it is an opportunity, and we want folks to be prepared and thinking about that and have fun with it. And we did talk with another community who was in the path of totality during the 2017 eclipse. And that was their message was, for the businesses that can and should stay open, have fun and really enjoy it.
So it sounds to me like be prepared best you can, have some fun with it. It is literally a once-in-a-lifetime event. And some pretty cool opportunities here. Some people, might be able to do pretty well with the special events. I know there's various groups are having special events. I know there's some sort of a hot air balloon event, for instance, that's surrounding this, that I think that's awful cool.
Yeah.
Christian, why do you think someone, I want to go back to that it factor a little bit here. Why do you think someone from out of state, what they call up your office and say, okay, we're going to check it out.
Yeah.
We're checking out Johnson County. We're also going to check out like a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. I'm just picking one out of.
Sure.
So we're checking out a suburb of, Kansas City. Somewhat similar metropolitan areas.
Yeah.
Why here? Why this suburb of Indianapolis, Johnson County? Why?
I'm glad you asked, Brad, because we do get a lot of phone calls like that. And I'll tell you, again, when that site selection process starts, companies are looking at a large geographical area that includes a lot of times multiple states, just like you said. They're looking at Louisville, Columbus, Ohio, Kansas City, St. Louis. And so for them, that entire region would be equitable in their mind in terms of accessing their client base or serving their client base or receiving from their vendors. So, but they're looking for, first and foremost, the very objective things. Look, does this community have a building or land that is suitable, that meets our requirements? Does this community have satisfactory infrastructure? So, and they're looking at interstates and international airports and ports. And so we stack up very, very well. When you think I-65, which connects all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico and up to Canada, we are right on the edge of 465, which then connects with 70, 74, and then now we have additionally 69.
Yes.
And so we get a lot of looks because when they are looking at a broad map, a big map, and they know, okay, we've got to get our stuff, our product in and out. We've got to get, supplies and inputs to make what we're making in. We stack up very well in Indiana. And so that's what gets us that objective first look. We also are a growing community.
Yes.
The Indianapolis region has really driven the state's population growth over the last 5 years. And Johnson County's been a huge part of that growth. In fact,
So give me just a couple numbers real quick,
Yeah.
for people to give me basically the population of Johnson County.
Yeah, so we're at about 160,000 right now.
And that shows approximately what kind of growth over, let's say, the last 10, 20 years.
Yeah, it shows 165,000, and so our growth has been pretty dramatic. Here's for example, from the period of 2017 to 2022, so 5 years, and that's during, of course, the worst of the pandemic.
Right.
Johnson County grew by 8%. Compared to the rest of the entire Indianapolis region, it grew by 6%, and then the state grew by 3%. So we know the Indianapolis MSA is a driver of population growth in the state, but I think what we don't acknowledge, and I don't think folks realize, is that Johnson County is an important part of that population driver. And again, in terms of the jobs and attracting the jobs here, the region during that same period of time grew 6% in the number of jobs that we had.
Yeah.
The state grew 2%.
Okay.
Johnson County,
Any
17.
And any projections, say 5, 10 years down the road, just kind of even guesstimates about that?
Yeah, we're still projected to have additional, 9-10% growth over the next 5-10 years. 5 years, and so still very healthy.
So that bodes well in many ways, presents its own set of challenges as well. You mentioned
Yeah.
housing being one of those.
Yeah.
And yet you're here. There's reasons why that happens, right? There's reasons why that happens. This is what we're talking about here today. And I think it gets down to those people that you mentioned and how people interact with those people. And I'd like for you to share with me, if you would, hear a story of where you've heard people tell you a story, you've heard a story where that change took place. Someone has either come here and brought their company here or just moved their family here and said, okay, this was a good move for us. Or you've seen a company say, we were doing X amount of business in this other situation. We came here and we're doing better now. Tell us a personal story about somebody or some situation that had a transformation by connecting with Johnson County.
Yeah. Happy to. And without disclosing that, the name of the company, I'll share that Johnson County was in competition for a really cool company expansion. This was to duplicate some capacity that they had in the southern part of the country, and they were just maxed out. The volume was too high. That community also was not a thriving, growing community. Its population was a little stagnant, and they were evaluating the Midwest. And quite honestly, they realized that Indiana was a great place to be, and it was one of those, we call it a site visit, where a company makes a visit.
Okay.
And it was one of those kind of trust us conversations, because they felt like they had been burned or let down in this other community where they were.
Okay.
And we're skeptical, rightly so, right? And so we talked about our people. We talked about the population.
Because their trust had been broken otherwise, sounds like.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And we talked with them about hiring. And honestly, I think they may have gone to another part of the state where there a different facility available, or they thought they should be at a different part. They thought they should be at a different part of the state. But luckily for us, we had exactly what they needed. And it was less than a year later, after they did open here, that I found out they had to slow down the hiring process because the labor market was so great. It was just blew their mind away how they were able to so quickly hire. And they did say, you're right, the people here are terrific. And it was a true success story. And the company is having an immense success. And in fact, worried now about we'll have to expand again.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. That's a great story. And I'm sure if we talked to particular people in that company, they would have stories to tell about their kids going to such and such school, or about, a restaurant or a park or one of those community events. And so I kind of want to bring us around to be personal for you just for a second.
Sure.
What is some of your go-to places in Johnson County?
Oh.
What, like a restaurant or something? Or,
Great question.
What's some of your places you just enjoy?
Oh, that's a tough question, right? Because I like them all. I
I got you.
all.
I got you.
But I think And I'm also a creature of habit, right? So sometimes that drives it. But I think you would most often find me at places like Giacomo's Pizza in Greenwood, Maine and Madison in Franklin.
Yes.
Those are a couple. Any of the coffee house fives that we have. So, we have a lot of great independent coffee shops in Johnson County. And so you will find me at a lot of those places. Vino Villa in Greenwood is one of the special places to treat yourself, either for a meal or a nice bottle of wine for a family event,
Sure,
or a friend. And so those are just a few of the places.
How about a fun activity that you have either done or look forward to doing here in Johnson County?
That's a great question. We have young children, and so places like going down to Appleworks, especially in the fall, is fun. Something we do. We also have terrific parks in Johnson County that the cities and towns and county has, and we do tend to frequent those to take advantage of those public places and just to be around other folks and enjoying the outdoors.
Wonderful. Well, any other message in general that you would just like to share for folks who might be listening to us who are really all in for Johnson County? They love this county. They want to see good things here. What would be a message you want to share to folks who might be listening to us here today?
That's a great question. We haven't talked a lot about, we talked a little bit about companies taking a look at Johnson County because we have a great inventory of buildings or available buildings or land. A lot of those buildings that you see, especially along the highways, the interstates, they start out empty. And because developers know that there is demand for a Midwest facility, and Central Indiana is really a hot spot, and Johnson County is helping to drive that cool factor, right? The it factor.
Right.
They will build those buildings empty with no specific tenant in mind. It's called spec. And the eventual uses of those can be really cool. And oftentimes I see in the newspaper when communities talking about those buildings, they refer to them as warehouses. And warehouse is a use. And so many of those buildings end up as light manufacturing, as service centers, or logistics, which is way more than just racks of stuff on shelves, right? If you're processing and moving things, there's a lot of equipment. And some end up as warehouses. But I think that's something I'd love the community to know, is that when you see those buildings go up, most of them are being built with no tenant in mind. And it's a risk. Right,
yeah.
The developers putting out
and
that
they are,
money.
If we're talking about the same thing, we're talking about massive facilities,
they're
aren't
huge.
we? Yeah.
They're huge. Anywhere on the smaller side, you may have 150,000 square feet, but many of them end up being closer to 1 million square feet.
Wow.
Again, with no tenant. Really, it's the field of dreams. You build it, they'll come.
I had no idea. I assume when I saw those places pop up in the interstate that somebody's coming there and they're ready to go.
And that's part of our job to help market those. Sure, those buildings and those developers have brokers that are making phone calls. But again, a lot of times that site selection process is very objective, and the companies themselves will hire a consultant to do these objective searches, which are oftentimes confidential, and they use code name. They won't even tell you the name of the company. It's Project Microphone, right? You don't know who the company is.
Right.
And so it's our job to say, hey, we've got that building size that you need, in Whiteland or in Franklin or in Greenwood. And we also know what the community wants and doesn't want. There are certain uses that may have an environmental impact that the community, and we'll tell the broker, hey, this is not a good fit for that, in our community. So I guess I just love the folks to know that those are empty.
I would kind of boil that down in one word: opportunity.
It's all opportunity. Yeah.
So if people want to take advantage of the opportunities that we're talking about here, tell me a little bit about the resources that Aspire gives, and give us a way they can be in contact with Aspire or yourself. Yeah. Tell us about what you offer.
Yeah, sure. For companies wanting to locate here and discover the it factor that we talked about, they should call our office at 317-888-4856, or they can email us at info@aspirejohnsoncounty.com, or just go to our website, aspirejohnsoncounty.com. For local residents who are business owners or aspiring business owners, we do have resources for them as well. We have partners who provide coaching, free coaching, one-on-one. We can connect them with those business coaches to help them start, launch, or grow an existing business. And of course, we offer a host of networking and professional development programs that existing business owners can also take advantage of.
Awesome. We will put connection. The website again is aspirejohnsoncounty.com, and we will put connections to everything that you've heard here today, the websites and the phone numbers and the emails at our website, which is allinjohnsoncounty.com. And it's been a pleasure to have here as our guest on All in Johnson County podcast, the President and CEO of Aspire Johnson County, Christian Maslowski. Thank you for being our guest today here on All in Johnson County.
Thank you, Brad.